two speeches today, more or less on the same topic. The first one is a bit more technical. There are a few medical terms, so I'm going to go through them with you now. But nothing too difficult. The first speech is about 7 minutes long. The second one is about 11 minutes long, but it's kind of a bit more fluffy, so should be okay. So this is a speech about the impact of strenuous exercise, or more specifically the impact of military training on the fertility of female soldiers. So I'll briefly be going into the endocrine system and hormones, since that's what affects fertility. So I have a few terms for you here. I'll be talking about the two phases of the menstrual cycle. The first of these phases is the follicular phase, which I haven't looked up in French or Spanish, which are my two languages, so sorry, but I think it's quite similar, because the second phase is the luteal phase, and that's the phase lutea or the phase luteale, so we're spoiled with the Latin today. So yeah, follicular phase, luteal phase. Then I'll be talking about luteinizing hormone, LH, hormone luteinisante, and hormona luteinizante. So that's luteinizing hormone, and the follicle stimulating hormone, or FSH. In the sources I found in French and Spanish, they used the same acronym as in English, so you can just say FSH or whatever in French too. Now, the big one, this is the one you don't want to mess up, because you'll mess up the whole speech if you mess it up, is GnRH, which is, where did I write it down on my piece of paper? Gonadotropin releasing hormone, GnRH. And in French, that is, the short way of saying it is gonadolibérine. And there's no short way of saying it in Spanish. It's hormona liberadora de gonadotropina. So have fun. But you can use the same acronym as in English, which is GnRH. So that's it for the medical terms. Then I'll also be talking about the army. So I'll be talking about Sir Nick Carter. Sir Nick Carter, the head of the British Army. Close combat, frontline roles, the squadron leader, and that can be jefe de escuadrón or de pelotón. And what I found in French was chef d'escadron. So whatever, up to you guys, you're in charge. And a few other things that will come up are the Royal Marines, the Royal Armoured Corps, and the Royal Air Force Regiment. That's just the different sections of the armed forces. So yeah, let's get started. So for most of human history, people serving in combat were overwhelmingly male. Notable exceptions include Queen Boudica and Joan of Arc. And throughout history, a few women have played other combat roles. We've had women serving in resistance movements in the Soviet Union and Yugoslavia, for example, in recent history. But you never step in the same river twice, and things have changed. Now, in countries such as Germany and Canada, women have been serving in combat units in the armed forces for at least 10 years. And in a study on these women, it was proved that women performed the same as men. So that's something to bear in mind. But in the UK, which is the country I'm going to be focusing on in this speech, the ban on women serving in roles in the infantry, the Royal Marines, the Royal Armoured Corps, and the Royal Air Force Regiment was lifted only last year in July of 2016. So the ban on women serving in combat roles was lifted on the recommendation of Sir Nick Carter, the head of the armed forces. And prior to the ban being lifted, there was an 18-month study carried out by the British Ministry of Defence. Now, this study looked at whether women would be able to meet the physical requirement of serving in units such as the infantry. The study focused notably on muscular injury, psychological health, and reproductive health. And it found that there was no evidence that women would not be able to cope. Something interesting to note is that prior to the lifting of the ban, the physical requirement to serve in combat was to run 8 miles or 13 kilometers in boots while carrying 25 kilos. I have to confess that I spent a lot of time looking for the new physical requirement now women can serve, but I couldn't find it. So either it's not been published or they're still working on it. The first women began serving in combat roles in the British Army in November of 2016. But just a few months later, a new study is being conducted. Experts from Army headquarters have teamed up with doctors and scientists for the research. And this time, they're going to be looking solely at female soldiers' reproductive health and how the training they undergo may affect it. Squadron leader Robert Gifford, the head of the research team, said, "The nature of military training may contribute to greater risk of reproductive dysfunction among female military trainees. If this phenomenon was shown to exist with UK military training, this would be of significant concern." We all know that exercise provides substantial health benefits, but it's also associated with a unique set of risks for the female athlete or soldier. It appears that strenuous training may wreak havoc on the female endocrine system, which controls the production of hormones involved in reproduction. Now, the key hormone at play here is gonadotropin-releasing hormone, or GnRH. GnRH is responsible for the release into our systems of follicle-stimulating hormone, FSH, and luteinizing hormone, LH. Both men and women secrete GnRH, but men secrete it in steady pulses, whereas for women, there's a surge in the secretion immediately before ovulation. What that means is that if you don't have GnRH being released into the system, you disrupt menstruation. Specifically, suppressing GnRH limits the secretion of luteinizing hormone, or LH, and to a lesser extent, follicle-stimulating hormone, or FSH. So that limits ovarian stimulation. The absence of the release of LH results in mild or intermittent suppression of menstrual cycles. So no menstrual cycle means no possibility of fertilizing an egg and getting pregnant. But what exactly is it about this hard exercise that suppresses the flow of GnRH? GnRH release is partly linked to body weight. Soldiers and athletes training hard tend to be leaner, and having less than 20% body fat leaves women prone to lower fertility rates with interrupted GnRH release, just as being overweight does. When your body is under so much physical stress, especially if you're not eating enough to compensate for the energy you're using, the body goes into starvation state. The brain thinks it's not a good time to have a baby, and the body and reproductive hormones go into shutdown mode. Now, there are less extreme versions of this in people who aren't that underweight, but they have intense workouts multiple times a week. If you're missing periods, in the long run, you're at risk for infertility, because over time, the lack of estrogen that's usually produced as part of menstruation can have long-term health consequences. That includes infertility, but also osteoporosis, and even heart attacks. So where does this leave the British Armed Forces? It was polemic enough to allow women to serve in combat, and now it turns out that they may have taken a wrong turn. Senior military figures have warned that the Army and the Ministry of Defence could be sued if it transpires they knew or suspected female recruits were at risk, but did not alert them to the dangers. And of course, all of this could serve as an argument against women serving in combat, but I'm not going to go into that today. I'd like to finish on this. Women are not alone in being affected by strenuous activity when it comes to our fertility. In fact, grueling exercise also impairs male fertility. Research shows that over-exercising can harm sperm production. And that's not to mention recent findings that male cyclists who rode more than 180 kilometers a week had more strangely shaped sperm. So maybe that's something to keep in mind for the boys as well. Thank you.